I just leave you to wrestle with that. Most people just don't even pay attention, just carry on against that. But if you're serious, interested in religion, I think you will wrestle with such questions. Yeah?
I mean, just to be the devil's advocate.
There's no devil to advocate here. You know, there's what
I'm
the
just
reading
thinking
is.
for Paul, I mean, obviously I understand what you're saying, but isn't that a symbolic gesture when they're
Well, I said, you
drinking the
can
blood?
do it symbolically. You think that's fine. That's
They're
good
not
enough.
actually drinking the blood, it's a symbol.
Well, by the time the Vatican got done with the transubstantiation of the host, for them the blood had become real. That
Yeah,
the
the
wine had literally.
Catholic idea, but not a Protestant.
No, I didn't say it wasn't. I didn't say it wasn't. Although some high church Protestants probably go according to that. Probably some Lutherans, Episcopalians probably hove to that view. But I agree with you. I think grassroots Protestants are more, more free in their mind and think for themselves. So I think, sure, you can take it symbolically, but I think you do have to ask the question, were the Jerusalem people aware of that commandment when James made these rulings? That I think is a legitimate question. My answer is no. You can take the yes side. I just take from the evidence of the document. Because I can't see how James could say that and still then say, okay, let's just do this symbolically. I mean, if I did that, you'd chuck me out of the room here. You wouldn't pay attention to what I said. That's what I mean. We know what Paul says. You've read your scripture, obviously, and you claim devil's advocate, and you're right. Paul in chapter 11 of Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 10, 12, announces all these things. And you can read and he seems to be answering James's rulings there. Because he says, now as to things sacrificed to idols, which is what we just heard about here, then here's what I think about that. An idol is nothing in the world, therefore you don't have to not eat things sacrificed to idols, like the big shot said. Only when people who have weak consciences, who are weaklings, come, then abstain, because they're so weak that they can't take seeing you do this. And therefore their consciences will be wounded. All this is incredible argumentation, and I don't think anyone really reads this stuff. It's in chapter 8, 9, 10 of 1 Corinthians. You'll see that it's correct what I'm telling you, because ministers don't tell their people about it, and most average believers just take the thing as already regulated and don't even figure there's a problem here. So in any case, so he goes on like that, and he finally ends up. Some of these people whose consciences are weak. I can read it to you if you want, but I don't have a good translation, so I won't hear. Some of these people whose consciences are weak, they're so weak they'll only eat vegetables, meaning they're abstained from meat altogether because they don't want to break any of these laws. And he's saying that vegetarians are weaklings. We don't think vegetarians are weaklings. Normally, we think people who are vegetarians are very, very strong. But that's him, because he's very facile, and he's extremely, as I said, what was the word, cynical. He'll take any argument he can to try to, make the progress of where he's going. And okay, if the construction he's making is a beautiful thing and it appeals to you, which it does to most people, I think that's fine. But if you are a kind of a nitpicker or a worrywart and say, hey, hold on here now, like you did to me just then, how can you do that and do this too? Then you might begin to worry. So anyway, all that is about Noah's commandment: do not eat the blood, because the blood has got the life in it, and you are not supposed to eat. I don't know why. I didn't make the commandments. I'm just saying that's in there, and that's why it's a big deal. That is why it's a big deal. It's been a big deal for Jews. The abrogation of it somewhere along the line for Christians is a big deal, and it's all because of this particular episode here. Okay. I'm sorry I got off the track, but I thought those might be interesting to you to think about those things, and that's what's come down the pipeline over 2,000 or 3,000 years from this material. And then, of course, in the priestly Eloists are going to call it that, we get the very famous thing about the fire next time, when James Baldwin, the famous Afro-American writer, wrote a book called The Fire Next Time. And this is where God promises the Rainbow Coalition. We've heard about Jesse Jackson and others. Afro-Americans like the Bible and often take it seriously, but they too generally pick and choose. For instance, when the spiritual comes along, Ezekiel's bones, there'll be a song, very, very clever song, them bones going to rise again. and so forth. But it makes the whole thing sound a little childish and silly, when in fact it's an incredibly moving appeal, and there it is symbolic for the restoration of the people to the land of Israel. It's just, he said, and I saw them stand up, a vast and immense army. We'll do that at the end of the class, Ezekiel. But you know, these things like this particular passage here, you know, have been used by lots of people. I heard someone on the radio, television, just within the last week or two, talking about the New Orleans flood. If we don't do something soon, it's going to be the fire next time. And that's right out of this passage here. So there's a lot of people that get very worked up about some of these things and use them for, whether they use them for sermonizing or whatever. But that's the passage it's based on. And so God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant, line 17, I have established between you and every living being that is found on the earth. When the bow is in the clouds, I shall see it and call to mind my lasting covenant between God and every living creature of every kind found on the earth, that I will not destroy the earth again. And so on and so forth. I don't know where the fire next time is, but somewhere buried in some of this material there is that statement, though, and I don't think it's in this particular passage. Here it just says that the rainbow is the sign. Well, now look, we're serious people. We know that the rainbow is probably not the sign that God will not destroy the earth again. That's what the poet has read into the rainbow. That's fair enough. If the poet wants to see the rainbow as a sign that God is going to be gracious and sympathetic and comforting, who are we to argue with that? But I only recently realized what a rainbow was. I don't know if you've noticed, but the rainbow, if you look in the sky, it just doesn't appear everywhere. And often it doesn't appear. But it almost always appears, it always appears when the sun is over here and the moisture is over here, and the moisture filters the sun's rays out into a reflection of the sun's, what do you call that with the sun's, not just the spectrum, but the whole thing around the sun, anyway, whatever you want to call that thing. And the reason it's round is because if you look, the rays are coming from the sun. There's a thing around glowing objects. It's called there's some word that does describe it. But so whenever I see a rainbow, I always